If you're thinking about getting started with Figma, this is the right place to be. We're going to be looking at the very basics of it in this video. Hello and welcome. I'm really excited about this video, but if you are new here, my name is Kevin, and here at my channel we learn how to make the web and how to make it look good with weekly tips, tricks, and tutorials. And as I said, we're going to be diving into Figma in this video. We're really going through the basics of how a lot of things work in Figma to be able to create what you see on the screen now. So by the end of this video, this is what we'll have created. I'm really going to walk through all the different things I'm doing to create this. We're using a lot of this to show you how Figma is working. So it's really an introduction to Figma. Before we get to that though, I just want to say that this video is being brought to you by Kyle's freelancing bundle. A lot of people are constantly asking me about freelancing advice, how to find clients, how to do design so they can start selling stuff to clients, how to communicate with their clients, how to find more clients, all of that type of thing, or even how to price yourself, all sorts of things like that. If any of those questions are things you've been asking yourself, this course is fantastic for you. In this course, he's covering things like freelancing fundamentals, how to position yourself towards your client, making sure you have multiple streams of income, because nothing's worse than having a single stream that just goes kaput. He's looking at how to price your services and how to keep finding new clients. He's looking at creating websites that work for your clients, as well as how to sell your services and how to make sure you're getting paid what you should be getting paid. And going into marketing and all of that. And it's not this like crazy price that you might find on a lot of these freelancing courses. It's really affordable. And extra bonus, he's giving anybody who puts in the code KEV25 at checkout 25% off. So if you use the link down below, make sure you use the coupon code so you can get 25% off. And honestly, if you do one job, you've already made more money than this course is going to cost you. So it really is one of those things that if you're looking to get into freelancing, it's a bit of, a no-brainer. It's immediate return on investment as soon as you have your first client. Now back to the topic of Figma, which we're going to be exploring the beginnings of in this. I really want to make sure that we're setting the foundation in this video and that we know exactly how the basic tools of it are working. Let's get to it. So here we are on Figma's website, and the cool thing with Figma is you can just work straight from here. You can hit login and you can work directly from the browser. Before we even look at that, let's check out what Figma even is. So you can see here, they say where teams design together. It is a design tool, obviously. And it is cool because you can work collaboratively. We won't be doing that in this video. We'll be seeing how it works as a nice standalone design tool. So it's vector-based, some really cool stuff, and design and prototype in tandem. So you can design and bring in your animations, stuff like that. We're not going to be looking at animations, the more advanced stuff in this. I will have other videos in the future that do take a look at how we can do some of those cool and fun interactive things. So for now, actually, let's just get started. So as I said, you can come and make a free account by clicking login up here, or you can download their app. They work pretty much the same, so don't feel like you're handicapping yourself one way or the other. I do have the app on my computer, so I'm just going to pop that open. And you can see if you've been in Figma before, you'll see all your artboards. If you're new here, I think there's a couple that come as like a default. So you might see that there's a few like examples along the way there. And I'm just going to come here to drafts and create a new draft. In the free account, you're allowed to have unlimited drafts. I have a free account right now. You can see I have as much as I want there. If you eventually start working on lots of projects, which if you're working with teams, you will be, then you might have to upgrade. But for the moment, we can get started for free. So we can just click here and make a new draft. Now, here's one of my biggest complaints with Figma is when you start, it looks like this, and this doesn't help us very much, to be honest with you. So we're going to run through it first, just the interface that we do have here. And you can see it has a very limited amount of tools that you can see at the top, but there are always more tools underneath a lot of these things. There's not always a lot. Some of them have more. We have a pen tool, stuff like that, typing, hand, and a little comment bubble there, I believe that is. Yeah. So the issue I have with Figma when you make a new file is you get this blank canvas, and you can go, oh, I want a square, and I could actually start drawing stuff here and doing stuff here, but that's not what you want to do at the start. So the very first thing you want to do is you want to go over to this guy right here, which is your artboards, or they call it the frame. And I'm used to Adobe where everything is called artboards. Here we're creating a frame. When you're on the frame tool, then you have two choices. You can either click and drag and make your own frame. It'll show you the dimensions that it's going to be, and we can start working on that. Or if I delete that, when I'm going to push F for my frame tool. And over here on the right, you can see that this is now changed and we get a whole bunch of different options. And this is one thing that you're definitely going to have to get used to if you're not used to design tools or Figma specifically, is that the menus are contextual. So if I'm on my frame tool, I get my frame options over here. If I switch over to this tool, you can see that it's changed over and we get a few different options. We're going to see there's a lot more that gets hidden away in these guys. So if we jump over to my frame tool, or again, I like looking, and I'm going to talk more about shortcuts after, but if I look and I see that my frame tool is the letter F, I'm not going to select it. I'm going to come here. Let's just, so I'm not going to select it. I'm going to switch tools and I'm going to push F, and I'm actually going to use the shortcut, because if you want to remember shortcuts, using them is the only way. Don't say next time I'll use F, push F right away. And a lot of people don't use shortcuts. You should definitely use shortcuts. So we can either draw one out, as I said, or we can choose from here. So let's just choose a nice big desktop design for the moment. And as soon as you create that, you can see that it actually automatically switched to this tool, which is your move tool. So that means I can move it around. No point in moving anything just yet, but that's there. And you can also see I have my layers here, and these are going to become important in a second. So the very first thing I think we should look at is one of the most basic tools, which is right here, my rectangle tool, and all the shape tools pretty much that we have there. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to select it. I looked on top and I saw that that's the letter R. So I'm going to push R, and then I'm going to draw a square here. Now, I want this to be like the hero area of my website. So let's just come, and you'll notice when I get to the edge, it actually locks in place. And when I let go, automatically it switched back to the move tool. Let's do that again. Push R, draw a box, and let go, and it switched to the move tool. This is super useful because it's so often that you finish with something and you always want to go to the move tool after to actually position it properly or to move other things around. So super useful. So with this, I can just move it and it's going to lock into place there, and then I can drag it across and do something like that. Now, remember, this is a contextual tool. So when nothing is selected, I just get this sort of background thing there. But when I click on a box I've already created, oh, I get a whole bunch of new options here. And for now, the only one I'm going to worry about is my fill. So I can click where it says fill, and I can come in and change the color here to anything I want it to be. So we get the nice little color slider here where we change the hue, and then within those hues we can choose whatever tint, saturation, shade, I was thinking a shade, tint, shade, or saturation of that color that we're going to be using. In our color picker here, where we're choosing our colors, that's probably a little strong. I'm going to go with just like a light gray actually for this. Back to almost where we started. There's also an opacity slider here. This is only going to be noticeable if you have other content on top. So maybe we'll look at that a little bit later. But if ever you want to play with the opacity, because there's nothing underneath, it looks like it's just taking a lighter version, but it's actually making this transparent. So this is like a transparency slider. 100% means 100% opaque, 0% transparent. And if I slide that way, it's the opposite. We're going all the way down to, we get to 0. I can't go to 0, I can go to 1. And I could probably type a 0 in there if I wanted to. Oh, I can't. Interesting, but it's not there anyway. Oh, it's at 0. Okay, there we go, and 100. We can also here turn on and off that layer sort of by selecting it. You can see I can turn that fill on and off, but don't, there's times you might want to do that, but we're not going to do it now. And you can actually add multiple fills. So you can see I've added a gradient on top, and I could add another gradient, and you can do some funky stuff here, but we're not going to worry about that. We're touching just on the basics right now, but know that there's some pretty interesting use cases and some fun stuff that you can do there. And so we have my sort of hero-y area that's going to be here, and we want to write some text in this. So I have my text tool all the way up here, or you might have seen it flash on the screen there, or this is like the one shortcut that I think every software ever uses, except maybe Quark. If any of you come from a print background, Quark had weird shortcuts. That's me coming from an Adobe background, but there's two options actually. If I push T or select my type tool and then I click, I can just start writing, hello world, and it makes a text box that's exactly the size of the text that I wrote. The other option is I can actually click and drag and make a text box, and I can write within that. The difference between the two of them really is if I came this way and I write a whole bunch of text, it just keeps going and going and going forever until I push return on my keyboard, and I can make new lines of text obviously. If instead of that, I take my text tool, but I drag it like this, and I start writing now, when I get to the end of the line, it's just going to break automatically. So this is, if you have paragraphs of text in general, you're not going to be doing a line break every time you need one. You're just going to draw a text box out. If you're used to Illustrator, you'll be used to this behavior already. So we want to write some text here. So really awesome, cool product. And now we can change what that text looks like. Now, one thing that's really cool with Figma that I love is it automatically brings in all the Google fonts. So if you like your Google fonts, I don't know if they're all in here, but you can see there's lots of fonts in here. I also have some extra ones activated on my own computer, so there'll be some bonus stuff in here. And then another thing that's nice is the default is Roboto, which just happens to be a really nice font. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm just going to bring this all the way up to black to make it more bold. And we can change the font size. Now for here, let's just bring it up to like a 72 for now. And we have a really awesome, cool product. That's what we have. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push T for my type tool, and I'm going to come and draw a box here. Now, I actually want this to be on 2 lines. I don't want it stretching the whole way across the side. So this is where it differs from Illustrator if you are used to it. If I grab the corner, so this is back on the move tool. If I go on to the corner here and I start dragging, you see it's not changing the text, it's changing the text box that was created when I was writing. And I can just come and break that and sort of line it up like that instead. If ever you want to go back, you can see there, I double clicked on the corner. So double click, and it just jumps back to the minimum size that box could be. And I'm just going to do something a little bit like that. And then I'm going to push T again and make a small box. This is going to be like the regular text that's going to go underneath it. But now just watch out because it remembered the last settings I used. So it's on Roboto black 72. So before I bring any text in there, let's go with a light, and we'll go with like an 18. And in here, we could now bring in a whole bunch of text. So I'm going to grab some lorem ipsum text now. So I'm just going to come up to Google and put in lorem ipsum. I tried the lorem ipsum.io before, and it wasn't working. So I'm just going to go with another one. I usually use this one, but it just seems to be stuck. So here, let's just choose 5 paragraphs and bring this in. I do have a plugin inside of Figma here, but let's not worry about that. We're sticking with the basics. So now that we're in here, I can just do a Control V, or if you're on a Mac, a Command V to paste it in, and we get all of my text. Now, black on green is not really the best. Let's come in and change this a little bit. And actually, you know what? Let's completely change this. I said I wanted to play around a little bit. So here we had my rectangle tool. I'm just going to jump down here to the ellipse tool, which is O. Never going to remember that shortcut. I'm so used to all the other software, but O it is. And I'm going to make a really big circle that actually goes off my artboard. And one reason I want to do this is to show you that or my frame, I should say. So I want to show you that what happens when you go off a frame is it's just cutting that. You're not seeing the parts that are off of it. So think of the frame sort of like your viewport from your website. And now we can also look at our layers here, where I have this layer is on top, and then I have my next layers that are coming underneath that. So that means that this layer is covering the ones that are under it. Now, if you remember back, if I click on something, we did have the fill, and we also had the opacity here. So if I lowered the opacity, now, as I said, it's going to make it a little bit transparent. So I'm just going to hit Control Z here, or if you're on a Mac, Command Z to go undo a little bit, because I don't want a transparent circle. I want the circle to be in the back. So the easiest way to do that is just to come to where your layers are and click and drag it down. And you can see now it's below, it's in between my 2 layers of text. And then I can take this and drag it down again. And now it's underneath everything like that. Except in this case, I'm going to make this, a little bit smaller too. If you have a circle or something, and you can do this with squares too, if you have a square, you can see if I click and drag in the corner, it's just misshaping it. Like I can make an oval, I can make any shape I want. But if I hold Shift down on my keyboard, doesn't matter if you're on a Mac or on a Windows computer, it keeps the exact shape you had. Now let's just make another ellipse. So when I'm creating my ellipse, if I hold Shift, it makes a perfect circle. But if I let go, it's going to make an oval. Once I have an oval, if I click on the corner and I want to change it and I'm holding Shift, it's going to keep that oval. It becomes more like a scaling tool instead of changing the shape tool. So just that is really important to remember. And actually, I'm going to make this really big. So I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to hold Alt. And if you're on a Mac, that would be Shift and Option. We're going to make that really big just so I get sort of like this shape coming off the side here. And I've done a few things now. This is when you're teaching the very basics. You'll notice I was moving around a little bit. Now to do that, we want to use the hand tool. So you grab the hand and you move around. And then when you're happy, you tend to zoom in and zoom out a lot. Now, I don't even see a magnifying glass. So I honestly don't know. I'm so used to the software that has magnifying glasses, but I never use it. I also never use my hand tool itself. I'm going to zoom in a bit here, and we'll get to that in a second. But what we do to zoom in and out or to move around is you push spacebar. And this is universal in like all design software. You push spacebar and you can move around just like that. And then when you let go of spacebar and the mouse, you get back to your move tool. So you can make your text look a little bit nicer, zoom in, make your little fine adjustments. and then move around, go to where you want, like go a spacebar, change, spacebar, move around. That if you're going to use one shortcut and only one shortcut, it has to be the spacebar one. Please don't go up and use the hand tool, because you have to use your hand tool, move around. You notice when I use the hand tool, it doesn't automatically jump back to my move tool. So I'd actually have to come all the way back up here and select my move tool. Oh my god, and it's painful. Don't do that to me. So spacebar, move around, let go, you're back on your move tool. And the move tool is also a select tool, right? Because if I'm clicking on, if I click and drag, it moves it. But if I just click on something, I'm just selecting the thing I'm clicking on. But now I zoomed in. So I said on a Windows computer, that's Control minus or Control plus, just like that. And if you're using a Mac, it'd be Command and the same one. So Command plus and Command minus. And there's also some other things that are nice, is Command 0 will go to 100%. Now, one thing with that Command 0 is it's Command 0, but on the keys at the top of your keyboard, not your number pad. I thought this just didn't work because in Adobe products, I always use the 0 on my number pad. I never use the one at the top. So just if you are zoomed in, Command 0, and it'll zoom you out all the way to 100%. All right, so this is a bit long. Now, one thing with the type tool, if you have a text box, unlike other design software that I know, if you make this smaller, it will overflow a lot more like actual CSS. And that's a really long one, so I'm just going to delete all this text because I don't think it looks very good. We're going to fix this up a little bit more, but I think we've covered a lot so far. So we've looked at how we can create a frame. We've looked at how we can create different shapes, how we can size those shapes using our move tool, scale things as well. So if I take that, I can sort of reshape this, but if it's a circle, I can, if I hold shift, I can rescale that pretty much and change the size of it. Now, eventually I'm going to bring a picture into here. Then actually I might play around with that a little bit. I'm not super happy with it, but whatever, we're getting there. The next thing I want to do, whoops, I zoomed out too far, Control 0. So these are the things you really want to get used to at the beginning. Just using your shortcuts a little bit, checking what they are. Hey, let's move on to some more, we want to get used to using the software. So just the next thing to do is you don't always want to move one thing and then move another thing. Though sometimes you've done that. You've moved this and you go, oh, I really want this text to be lined up with that. I could come and grab this and just slide it over, and eventually there's these smart guides that click on and they tell me, okay, it's actually lined up. That's really useful. But another way you could do it is actually to select both of these. And it's really easy to select two things. You just go where nothing is, and this could even be like off your artboard. Just click and drag and select everything you want. Cool, right? So those are both selected. And now when things are selected, you always get these alignment options at the top. I'm not going to get into the distribution ones, but definitely play with them. We'll look at those in another video. But just the basic align ones are really, really useful. So I grab both of them and then I can align all of that to the side that way. Or if I had them both this way and I liked this one better, I could grab them both and I could line them both that way. Not so great. If this was center aligned text and I wanted them both to be centered with each other, I grab them both and I can center them. Now there is an annoying thing right now is I'm saying grab them both, but what happens if they were on top of a background? So there's a few different options here. If this background is perfect and you're never going to move it, what I would suggest actually is coming to your layers and locking the layer. And actually one thing you should do is name it. So let's call it Hero BG for Hero Background. So to do that, I'm literally just double clicking where the name is and then I can change that. You can turn visibility on and off here, and you can lock it. So if it's locked, I can't move that layer. So it makes it much easier to manipulate things that are on top because I don't have to worry about accidentally selecting it. But let's say I hadn't locked it and I want to grab both of those. If I come off and I do that and I move stuff, it's going to move including my background because you can actually see here in my layers, all three got selected. So there's a few different ways you can do this. I can click on this one and then I can shift click on that. So just like selecting files, you can select multiple things, shift click here, whoops, click. Shift click here and it's added that. And if I have too many things selected, so say I did a big selection and I don't want my background selected, I can shift click on it and it's going to drop that from my selection. So shift click will add or remove something from your selection. Let's try that again. Shift click on my there and then shift click on it again. So as long as I'm holding shift down when I'm clicking, it's going to add and remove whatever I click on to my selection. There we go. We can move that off again. I made it really big there, so I'm just going to shrink that down. And I'm going to position it something like that. And we were looking at the alignment tools. So again, let's just fix the alignment, text align. I'll do left align and then left that way. And then I can just drag this up like that and position it however I want that to be positioned. Cool. I think that's starting to look pretty good. Now, usually when you have something like this, you have a button that comes down after that. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in a rectangle because we got to draw a button. So the rectangle tool is right up there. You're really tempted to go and drag your mouse and click on that. But instead of doing that, what are you supposed to do? Hope you said use the shortcut. Now what's the shortcut? It's easy. That one's the easy one. It's R. R for rectangle. So, there we go. I got a rectangle and I can draw it out. So I can create that R there. And actually, I'm not going to do that. We're going to say this is really awesome, cool product. We're going to add, actually, I want to show you. Okay, so I almost did something there. I want to duplicate this. So you could do it like anything else. You can do a copy and paste, Command C, Command V, and like magic, there's 2 of them. It's like a magic trick with the cards, knowing they peel a card off that you didn't know there was actually 2 there. There's one hiding behind the other one. So Control C, Control V. You can see my layers now. I have 2 of them. Let's undo that. And then Control V. And again, you just keep adding more on top, one on top of the other one. So that's one nice thing when you paste, that it ends up in the same place. But if I have something I want to duplicate, instead of Control or Command C, Command V, or Control C, Control V, to duplicate it, then I have to drag it, then I can do stuff with it. What I can also do if I'm on a Windows computer is I can Alt drag, and you can even see when I push Alt, you can see the cursor changes to like this double cursor. It's like the duplicate cursor. So I'm duplicating that. So I just click and drag and it duplicates it. I can do the same thing here. You can even, if you had a whole bunch of stuff, and then I can Option, if I'm on a Mac, it's Option drag. If you're on Windows, it's Alt drag. I can drag on that and you can see the whole thing. It's duplicating everything that was selected. So that can be really, really handy. So what I want to do here is just bring that down a little bit, and I'm going to write coming soon. And the reason I duplicated it is just because I like the font size and everything there, but I'm just going to come to my color here and maybe make it less prominent, and we can change that font size a little bit down to 48. So this product's not out yet. Maybe we do it, we could even do like a little coming soon like that. And then I'm going to option drag this one down. And the reason I'm option dragging these instead of making a new text box and then having to do it from scratch is it's so much faster, because then you just double click to start selecting the text. So double click, it selects all my text, and sign up to be the first to know when it comes out. And I have this really big box, double click on the corner, it shrinks down. So maybe that one could actually be bold. So we're learning some font controls here at the same time. So that we could have. And then this here, instead of just a button, why don't we make it, because we can go back over and practice some of these things that we just looked at, and learn a little bit more while we're at it. So maybe this could be like my name, my email, and then we'll make finally a button for sign up. So if this is a field that we're going to fill out, what would probably make more sense is having no fill. So I can subtract my fill, so there's no fill, and then come over to stroke here and add a stroke to it. And I don't really like the black stroke, so we can change the color of the stroke, and you can change how thick it is. So maybe we make that like a big thick box, but we make it kind of light. And then we want to duplicate it. So again, you could copy and paste and then move that over, but you can Alt and drag, or if you're on a Mac, you can Option and drag it. And then last but not least, we can do the same thing and make that a button. But what I would suggest, I do this all the time and then realize I want stuff in it. So before you do that, finish your thing off first. And this would be like a really good thing to make into a component eventually. But I'm not going to cover components in this video. But I'm going to write first name here. Maybe this could be a bit smaller. It's a small label, but at least we have our label there. And I want it bold, but I'm going to drop that down just a little bit. Maybe 14 is a bit small. We'll do something like that. I'm just, oh, actually, I never looked at this before. When we're moving things, if you just move things, you can move them however you want. If you want to make sure they're moving perfectly up and down, if you hold Shift, when I hold Shift, I can't move it side to side, except at 45, no, I can't move it side to side. It's either up and down or left and right. There's no like random movement. So I often hold Shift down when I'm moving things around, except now I'm having trouble. So this is where I'd probably zoom in. I looked at one before, which was Control plus, Control minus. The other way to zoom in is spacebar and Control, or spacebar and Command. Now the one issue with this is do not do Control then spacebar, it will not work. Spacebar then Control, and you can draw the zoom in that you want to make. So ideally this would be a component, but as I said, we're not at components yet. You don't have to know components to get started. So we can Option drag both of those now that we've selected them. and move that over, and then just change this one to say last name. And then I could just take this and drag that over to make it into a button. So the button, obviously, we want to make that a little bit smaller probably. The text is going to go inside, so I just option drag my text right in the middle. And you'll see when I position it, it's telling me that it's actually perfectly centered, but let's pretend we didn't perfectly center it. I could drag both, make sure they're both selected, not my circle. So I have them both selected, and then I can do center align this way and center align that way, and it's perfectly centered inside. And now I can just come to here. I'm going to leave that stroke on, but I'm also going to give it a fill. So I'll hit plus here, and I have the fill. Now I have two different colors here. I want them to be the same. And one cool thing with Figma is it actually keeps all the colors of your document down here at the bottom. So I think that's going to be this one, I guess. Yeah, there we go. It's that one right there. I want it to be lower down because it's all the way on the top, and that text is hiding underneath it. So we saw before, I can click and drag things here. Another way you can do it is right click, and there's the options here: bring forward, bring to front, send backward, or send all the way to the back. So in this case, I want to do a send backward. So you can also see it's control and square bracket. So look right here. I'm going to do control square bracket down, or it's the opening square bracket, and I can move it that way. And if I do the closing square bracket, I can bring things back up. And I'm going to keep those two together. And we can do sign up. And now that I changed the text, actually, I'm going to center align that text, but we're going to grab both, and we're going to do center, center. This text maybe would make sense to be all cap. So that's actually, we don't have to rewrite it. We can go to the type details, and right there we can get uppercase. And there's some really cool stuff that hides out over here, so you could always check that out a little bit later. And the sign up, because it's gray on gray, I'll just darken that up a little bit. And things are starting to come together a little bit. I'm going to move this over a little more. Maybe even if we overlap that, but we came in with like a color. Could be, or maybe not. So we start getting this that's, you know, coming together as a little bit of a layout, and we've learned a whole bunch of stuff. Another way we could spruce this form up a little bit is if these had round corners on them, and it's really easy to make round corners. The thing is, sometimes you'll see the option for it and sometimes you won't, and it depends on how zoomed in you are on something. So when I click, see, I get these little white circles in the corner. If I zoom out, those go away. If I make a really big rectangle, I'm going to see them right away. But on a small rectangle, if I make that smaller, those white circles aren't there anymore until I zoom in. So if ever you're like, why is that option not showing up for me? Just zoom in on your rectangle. And the other thing is, it also depends if your mouse is on top or not. See how I'm going back and forth? Now, if I zoom out more, those just never show up. So part of it is being zoomed in enough, and part of it is your mouse on top or not? Now there's another place, we'll see where it is, but this is the easy way to do it because it's really visual. So I can just click and get something. So say I like that, you know, just get a value, you know, I'm visually doing this. I'm not looking at the value. But once you get a shape that you actually like and you think it's good, you're happy with your round corner, that rounded radius is actually right here. So what's happened here is we've got the X and Y coordinates, the width, the height, and here we have the radius. And I think 10 is good. So I could actually come on these. Now with these ones, because I'm selecting multiple, I can't actually do anything. I can't come in here and do much. So I'd have to do one at a time, but I know I need 10, so I can just do 10, come over here, do 10, hit enter, and I have the round corners on all of them. And actually, since we're here, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the spacing on these is perfect. I said I wasn't going to do it, but bonus tip here at the end. We're not at the end yet, but we're getting there. But we'll do a nice little bonus tip here to make sure things are equally distributed or equally spaced. The first thing I'm going to do is, and it's more layer management now, I'm selecting my sign up in my rectangle because I want to make sure they're treated like one object. So to do that, now I can right click and I can choose group selection or Control G. And this is a really good one to know. Control G, and you can see it actually makes a group. So I can call this sign up button. And if I look inside that, I can see the two elements that are in there. Now, sometimes you're going to make groups just for moving stuff and then you want to ungroup it. So ungrouping it, again, you could right click and you could choose, is there even an, there it is, ungroup. So it's control, I found group and then there's like a frame select and then there's the ungroup. I would have preferred that up there, but it is what it is. Control Shift G. But it's G is super easy to remember. So if I look here, I'm just using the shortcut, Shift Control G, it undoes it, and then a Control G, and it goes back together like that. So I want to make sure it's grouped, because if I don't, it's treating, well, actually, we'll see what it is in a second, but let's select all 3 of these. I keep selecting my circle. I'm going to lock my circle because I don't want to select it. So I'm going to select these 3 here, and then I'm going to come to this last thing, which is my more options, and I can either tidy up or I can distribute things equally. Let's try tidy up. It usually works really well, and it pretty much makes the spacing perfectly equal. Now, another thing is, if you have things and they're spread out and you're bringing it in, you can actually see at one point, it's going to tell you when they're the same distance. And I'm going really slow now, and then it locks a little bit too, it sticks here. If I move my mouse a little bit, you can see it's sticking to that space. So it's saying the distribution is equal, but if ever you have a whole bunch of stuff and you just want to really quickly do it, and even let's just do even like something like that, select it all, go to here, tidy up, and align them all to the same top, and there we go. Now I want them closer together. So another way to do that actually is if you have like really big spacing on stuff, and I bring this on top like that, I could just do a distribute horizontal spacing, and then boom, looks good. In this case, let's just move those out a little bit, and I could group these together too. I could make a group with that and a group with that, just so every time I select one of these, like I'm selecting everything all together. When you make your groups, do name them. So sign up button, first name, last name, because if not, you never know what they are. And I'm even going to put them in the right order. So first name, then my last name, then my sign up button. And because I like having these in order that I see them here, so sign up to be the first one should be even lower down, just some coming soon should be right there, and lorem ipsum. So really cool product, and I can click here to select stuff. So as I'm clicking, you can see it's going through and selecting everything. We'll shrink that down a bit. Be the first to know, first name, last name, sign up button, and then my hero BG there at the end. One of the last things I want to look at is placing images. So placing images is super easy to do. One way, I'm just dragging this from my desktop and dragging it over here onto Figma, and it's going to drop the image that I wanted right inside of Figma. Now my image is really big, so I'm just doing a Control- to zoom out, and then I'm pushing Shift and Alt, or if you're on a Mac, it'd be Shift and Option, just to shrink it because it's faster. Like a lot of the time, if you're doing it this way, you have to do it, then move it. So Shift, Alt, and it drags it from the middle. And I could position this image, and then I'm going to do a spacebar control to zoom in, or I could have done the Control-0 to get to 100%. Lots of ways to zoom. And then I could, position this however I want. But obviously, one actually really nice thing with Figma is it will crop your image automatically. So if you're taking it away from the original dimensions, you can see it's cropping it however it needs to crop it to fit those dimensions, which is really handy. If you want to make sure that you're keeping your whole image, just always hold Shift, just like we saw, that's sort of like scaling, right? So we can hold Shift and it's going to make sure that it does that right there. The thing is, I don't want this. Now I could come actually on this and make some round corners on it if I wanted to, and maybe that would be cool, but I want to sort of use the circle thing I made here. So maybe I'm going to reposition that a little more. So let's bring that in like that. And maybe these are kind of big, so maybe I can shrink those down. Just so, I think that's probably going to be big enough. These now, these are in a group. If I'm in a group and I want to select one layer in the group, I could either click it here and drag it out, or I can just double click on it and drag it out that way. And then when I click anywhere else, it leaves the group, just so I can bring that on top more. And I sort of want to line the bottom of the circle up with that and maybe bring it a little more, because visually it's going to make it feel like we're there a bit more. And now I think what I'm going to do is I have this as my layout, but now I want to place my image in there. So that's actually going to be under here, which I find a weird place for it. But all the way at the bottom, you can see there's a place image, or it's a really awkward shortcut of Control-Shift-K. No idea where that came from, but Control-Shift-K, and then we can find the image. So it's just in my downloads, and we can get that. And it's going to ask me to place it on whatever I click on. So even if I click on my text, check that out, it places it inside my text just like that. So easy, incredibly easy to do. I don't want it to be there though, so let's undo. So Control-Z, and let's do that again. Place image. I got this from Unsplash, and I want to place it here, so I'm just going to click, and it puts it inside. So super easy, super awesome. Another way that you can actually do this, another thing with this, and this is a little bit like InDesign for any of you print designers out there, if you grab multiple things at once, like multiple images, and you go to do a place, it works a lot like InDesign, where I can click on multiple places. So I could place one here, then the next one here, then the next one here, and then finally one here. If ever you have a whole bunch of assets, so you say you had like a set of 8 cards, you want to place all 8 cards really fast, you can do it that way. But we don't want to do that for now. We just want to bring that in. One thing also that's really cool with Figma, if I click on my image, and I'm going to reposition that. I don't really like how I set that up. I'm going to actually, I want it to be more like this. I'm holding shift. I still want it to be a perfect circle. One thing that's really cool though is if I come to my image here, it's on my like fill options. So you can see it is set to fill, but I get all these options for like tint. I could change the tint of my image. I could change the contrast, the exposure of the image here in Figma, which is really, really neat. And I think you can even replace the image as well, or I can switch it. I don't want an image anymore. If I choose solid now, it's going to wipe it out and put a solid color. But we don't want to do that. I think the image is looking pretty good, but actually now that I'm looking at it, I think this text could be a little bit bigger. And one thing I can't do, and I mentioned here, if I shift this, it's sort of like a scale. If I select these and I shift, it's scaling the box, but it's not scaling the text inside that box. So to be able to do that, there's another tool, and it's underneath my move tool, and it's called the scale tool. And this one is a K, and they have a thing with K. Their place is with K and scale is with K. I don't know why they like the letter K, especially for scale, but it is what it is. It's a good one to remember. So that one I would actually suggest just hit K. Now, one thing I don't like is you'll see here I'm on my V tool, my move tool. It looks like that. And if I switch over to K, the tool doesn't look different. So I often switch and then forget I've switched because my black arrow didn't change at all, but it's just the way it is. But you can see here I'm on my scale tool now, so I can actually scale this up and down now. I don't have to go through and start playing with my font sizes. I can scale this to how I need it to be. So I'm actually going to scale that up a little bit. Then I'm going to come here, I'm going to push V to switch to my move tool. So now I can actually just move it around instead of being on the K, because the K you might accidentally start scaling it. You can move around stuff with your scale tool too though. And maybe I do something like that. And last, I think for the layout itself right now, I'm kind of happy with it. I'm going to move that just to give a bit more breathing room along there. We'll go with something like this. The last thing I'm going to look at now is grabbing colors, because colors can be hard. I don't want to go too in depth into the world of colors. Actually, I'm going to move that up, and maybe we'll do like something like that. I guess is okay. But what I want to do is grab some colors, and this has really nice colors in it. So I can take this, and where I have my fill, you'll notice there's an eyedropper. So I can actually click on that, and I can grab a color from here. So I can go through and grab a pink really fast. I can also, if you don't, that's kind of long. So just like any other design software, if you're used to anything else, if you just click I, you get your coming soon. I don't like it. I want something darker. Not fantastic colors maybe, but here, and that now actually just really fast, even though this is a group of items, one thing I love with Figma is it shows me the 2 colors that are being used here, my dark color and my light color. And now I can go to here and choose that same pink I was using, and then I can choose my text color here and bring that all the way up to white so I can actually read it. This one I'm going to bring back into the grays though, or maybe a dark purple or something like that. And this could match that, so I could run through and quickly start adding some color to these. Maybe even here, let's go to my rectangle tool, so I'm pushing R. Oh, really important here. If I'm making a rectangle and I push spacebar, it moves that without me letting go. So I can sort of position that a bit better, move it all the way across, drag it all the way down under everything, and position that a bit more. I'm going to eyedrop in these light pinks. I'm going to come over here and just lighten it way up. Maybe I can round these corners just because we have round corners there. We have this big round circle. We can make this like that. These ones now I think would make sense if they actually had a fill. I want just stroke, that's the fill. So because I'm double clicking to come inside here, and I can come here and add a fill, which will be white. Double click on this too. Fill will be white. And I don't really like the outside corner or color, so I'm selecting both. That was this one. I think for that, I'm actually going to go back to the darker purple. Maybe this purple, something like that might work a little bit nicer. And we start getting towards some sort of, like a call to action sort of thing coming out of that. And we could do something a little bit like that. I'm not sure if I like that being bold, so now you start playing around with things a little bit. I think I might even just leave this straight. and bring it underneath. Now, one way you can make sure that it's going to be straight, if you drag and turn, you're rotating. If you hold shift, you can see it locks things into place. So you can sort of come through and lock that into place, coming soon. Make that more like multiple lines of text. And now my image, I'm actually going to make bigger, but bring it off to the side a bit more, just so this is, I think that sort of frames everything a little bit more. And we got sort of this hero area for the landing page is coming along. I don't think it's perfect by any means. These are actually probably a bit too round, looking at it now. So I'm just going to sort of tweak things a little bit here, but you can play around with it. This should also all be lined up. Let's just grab everything, group it all, call that CTA for call to action, not GTA, CTA. And position that. I want to just make sure that everything here, like this and this, I want them to be lined up. So I'm just visually doing that a little bit. And when I did that, you can see that when I grouped it, it pulled everything ahead. So I could, again, drag it all the way down. I can also just do a shift control, opening square bracket, and that means go all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to leave that open because that's one of those things that you might group and ungroup a few times. Maybe up here you need a little logo or something like that, but you can come through and we have a nice little sort of landing page for a new product that will be coming out. I hope you like that. I hope you learned a few things with this, and I hope you are... What I'd really encourage you to do is not just watch this video, but to try and design something yourself. Figma is one of those things, it's like anything else. When you're trying to learn something, don't just watch what other people are doing. Really get in there and actually try to make stuff and do stuff and have fun with it. If you're not strong on design and design's your weak point, but you're trying to get into design, look at other designs. I sort of created this one from scratch, but I had looked at stuff ahead of time to sort of have an idea of what I wanted to do. Do that. Look at other designs, copy them. At the beginning, just copy the design completely. Try doing it in Figma. You're going to be learning about designs more subconsciously because you're copying something, and you're going to be learning how Figma works at the same time. It's a pretty easy tool to get into. We don't need all the bells and whistles like the components. I don't even know if they call it components, but whatever they call it. You don't need to be doing the prototyping stuff from the beginning. You just need to be making stuff. You are going to learn how the software works. You're going to get comfortable with the basics, and then you start adding some of that fancy stuff on once you're used to and comfortable using the software. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is to use your shortcuts. Please, please, please use shortcuts. You just work so much faster. It's incredible the difference, and it really sinks in quickly. If, again, look at what the shortcut is. Oh, it's K. I'm not going to push anything. I'm going to come back down, and then I'm going to push K on my keyboard. You do that 5 or 6 times, you start remembering that it's K, and you don't have to look anymore. So that's like the biggest piece of advice I can give you when you're starting to learn a design software. Start using the shortcuts immediately. Also, before you go, don't forget to check out the link to Kyle's course that is just down below. And that is it for this video. If you did enjoy it, please consider subscribing if you have not yet subscribed. I don't have tons of design content yet, but it is something that I plan on making a really big part of my repertoire here. I'm still going to be going with CSS, tons of front-end material, but I want to balance that out with a lot more design content because that's what you guys have been asking me for. Thank you very much for watching. You guys are amazing. A really big thank you to my patrons for their monthly support. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make everything I do here possible.